May 29, 1453. Dawn breaks over Constantinople. The morning light reveals what was once unthinkable: cracks in the legendary Theodosian walls that had protected the city for 1,000 years. Inside, exhausted defenders clutch weapons with bloodied hands. Church bells ring frantically across the city. Outside, tens of thousands of Ottoman soldiers prepare for one final assault. By sunset, the Roman Empire, which had endured for over 2 millennia, would draw its final breath. The fall of Constantinople wasn't just a military defeat, but a shock that would reverberate through Europe, Asia, and beyond. 6 centuries later, we're still feeling its aftershocks, and how that single day in 1453 changed the course of human history forever. To understand the magnitude of Constantinople's fall, we must first understand what the city represented. This wasn't just any imperial capital, it was quite literally the crossroads of the world. Founded in 330 CE by Emperor Constantine the Great as New Rome, Constantinople sat precisely where Europe meets Asia, where the Mediterranean flows into the Black Sea through the strategic Bosporus Strait. Whoever controlled this city controlled the flow of goods, people, and ideas between continents. The city boasted architectural wonders that defied imagination. The Hagia Sophia, with its massive dome that seemed to float in mid-air, remained the largest cathedral in the world for nearly 1,000 years. The Hippodrome could hold 100,000 spectators for chariot races and imperial ceremonies. The Great Palace complex sprawled across acres, featuring marble halls, golden mosaics, and mechanical wonders, including golden birds that sang and bronze lions that roared. But Constantinople's true strength lay in its defenses. The city was protected on 3 sides by water, and on the 4th by the mighty Theodosian walls, a triple layer of fortifications with a moat so formidable that for centuries, military engineers considered them effectively impregnable. When visitors approached Constantinople, the first thing they saw was not the splendid buildings, but these towering walls stretching over 4 miles across the peninsula. By 1453, Constantinople was a shadow of its former glory. The once mighty Byzantine Empire had been reduced to little more than the city itself, and a few scattered territories. The Fourth Crusade in 1204 had dealt a devastating blow when Western Christians, supposed allies, sacked the city in what historians consider one of history's most profitable crimes. Though the Byzantines reclaimed their capital in 1261, the empire never truly recovered. Still, Constantinople remained Christianity's eastern bulwark, the shield that had protected Europe from successive waves of invaders for centuries. Its libraries preserved classical knowledge that would otherwise have been lost to time. Its churches housed sacred relics that drew pilgrims from across Christendom. Its markets still traded silks from China, spices from India, furs from Russia, and gold from Africa. When the 21-year-old Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II took power in 1451, he understood that conquering this city would transform him from a regional ruler to a world historical figure. "Either I will take Constantinople," he declared, "or Constantinople will take me." The stage was set for a confrontation that would mark the end of the medieval world and the birth of a new era. In early April 1453, residents of Constantinople looked out from their walls to witness a terrifying sight: an Ottoman army of approximately 80,000 men spreading across the horizon. Sultan Mehmed II, who would soon earn the title Fatih, the Conqueror, had assembled a force that represented the cutting edge of 15th century warfare. The Sultan's army was revolutionary. While the Byzantines relied on medieval tactics and technologies, Mehmed embraced the future of warfare. He had recruited engineers and artillery experts from across Europe, including a Hungarian cannon founder named Urban, who had initially offered his services to the Byzantines. When Emperor Constantine XI couldn't afford his fee, Urban turned to the Ottomans, who provided him with all the resources he requested. The result was truly terrifying: a massive bronze cannon over 26 feet long that could fire stone balls weighing up to 1,500 pounds. Moving this monster required 60 oxen and 200 men. When it fired, the sound could be heard for miles, and witnesses reported that the ground shook as though struck by an earthquake. Even more frightening, the Ottomans had several of these bombards, though Urban's creation, often called the Basilica, was the largest. As impressive as the land army was, Mehmed knew that previous sieges had failed because Constantinople could be resupplied by sea. The Byzantine navy was long gone, but Christian allies, particularly the Genoese and Venetians, could still reach the city through the Golden Horn, the natural harbour on the city's northern side. The entrance to this harbour was protected by a massive chain stretched across the water, preventing Ottoman ships from entering. In a stunning feat of engineering and determination, Mehmed ordered his men to build a road of greased logs over the hills behind Galata, across from Constantinople, and physically drag about 70 ships overland, bypassing the chain barrier. When Byzantines awoke one morning to see Ottoman ships floating in their supposedly secure harbour, the psychological blow was devastating. Inside the walls, Emperor Constantine XI had assembled every fighter he could find, a force of about 7,000 defenders, including Byzantine soldiers, Italian mercenaries, and ordinary citizens willing to take up arms. The Genoese captain Giovanni Giustiniani Longo, an expert in defending walled cities, commanded the defense with skill and courage. For 53 days, the bombardment continued. The sound of cannons became the city's grim heartbeat. Stone balls crashed against the ancient walls, causing sections to crumble and requiring desperate overnight repairs by the defenders. Food grew scarce. Rumors spread through the streets, some claiming divine intervention would save the city, others whispering that the end was near. The Byzantines watched with mounting dread as Ottoman sappers dug tunnels under their walls, hoping to create collapse points or emerge inside the defenses. Byzantine engineers countered by digging their own tunnels to intercept the enemy, leading to terrifying underground battles fought in near-total darkness. As April turned to May, both sides recognized that the siege was reaching its climax. The defenders were exhausted, their numbers dwindling daily. The attackers had suffered losses too, but Mehmed could replace his fallen soldiers. Constantine could not. Before we continue, if you're finding this pivotal historical moment as fascinating as I do, please subscribe to our channel. We explore history's most dramatic turning points and understand how they continue to shape our world today. Thank you. As the siege entered its final days, life inside Constantinople became increasingly desperate and surreal. The city that had once been home to 500,000 people now sheltered perhaps 50,000 frightened souls. Emperor Constantine XI, the last Byzantine emperor, moved among his people, personally inspecting the damaged walls, encouraging the defenders, and participating in religious processions. Contemporary accounts describe him as calm and dignified, even as the situation grew increasingly hopeless. When offered a chance to escape the city and save himself, he reportedly answered, "How could I leave? I would rather die here with you." The defenders' situation grew dire as Ottoman cannons continued their relentless work. Each day brought fresh damage to the walls, and each night saw frantic repairs. Sleep became a luxury. Food supplies dwindled to near nothing. The defenders began melting down church objects to create more ammunition, an act of desperation that would have been unthinkable just weeks earlier. As hope for earthly salvation faded, many turned to divine intervention. A prophecy circulated that the city would be saved when the Ottoman invaders reached the column of Constantine in the city center. At that moment, an angel would descend from heaven, hand a flaming sword to an ordinary man, and the Turks would be driven all the way back to the Persian frontier. On May 28th, the day before the final assault, Constantine ordered a solemn procession of holy icons and relics through the city. The most sacred image of the Virgin Mary was carried along the walls. Christians of both Eastern Orthodox and Roman Catholic faiths now prayed side by side for salvation. That evening, the emperor addressed his remaining officials and commanders in Hagia Sophia. His speech, recorded by historian Kritovoulos, stands as one of history's great last addresses. "Gentlemen, illustrious captains of the army, and our most Christian comrades in arms, we now see the hour of battle approaching. Though I know that our enemies are many, and that they are coming against us with many ships and countless troops, all filled with audacity, nevertheless, I believe that they will not accomplish anything further than what God's providence has destined for them. Throughout our history, our empire defeated many enemies, and now our city stands ready to face this terrible great beast, fearsome though he may be. Remember that you are the descendants of Greeks and Romans, whose empires were the greatest in world history." That night, as the defenders took up their positions, many made their way to Hagia Sophia for one last communion. Orthodox priests and Catholic cardinals, setting aside centuries of schism, performed the sacred rites together. By midnight, the great cathedral had emptied as everyone returned to the walls for the final stand. In Ottoman camps, preparations for the final assault were also underway. Mehmed addressed his own troops, promising them the right to plunder the city for 3 days if victorious, a standard practice in medieval warfare, but one that would seal Constantinople's fate. Religious leaders moved among the soldiers, promising paradise to those who would die in the coming battle. As both sides waited for dawn, the city lay under an eerie silence, broken only by prayers from the walls and the sound of Ottoman war drums in the distance. Tuesday, May 29th, 1453, at approximately 1:30 a.m., under the light of a waning moon, Sultan Mehmed launched his final assault. The attack began with waves of less skilled troops, Bashi bazooks and irregulars, sent forward as the first wave to exhaust the defenders' energy and ammunition. Although these troops fell by the hundreds, they served their purpose, forcing the Byzantines to fight continuously through the night. As dawn approached, the second wave attacked, the Sultan's elite Anatolian Turkish soldiers who pressed the assault with greater skill and determination. The defenders, though exhausted, held their positions. The legendary Giovanni Giustiniani moved his best men to points where the walls showed the most damage, directing the defense with tactical brilliance. The elite Janissary Corps, the Sultan's personal troops, moved forward in disciplined formation. These were specially trained warriors, many taken as children from Christian families through the Devşirme system and raised to be the Ottoman Empire's most fearsome fighting force. Around 5 a.m., disaster struck the Byzantine defense. A small postern gate called the Kirka Porta, which had been opened to allow a sortie against the attackers, was either left open or inadequately guarded during the confusion of battle. Ottoman forces discovered this opening and poured through, raising their banners on the walls and attacking the defenders from behind. Almost simultaneously, Giovanni Giustiniani, the inspirational leader of the defense, was seriously wounded by an Ottoman bullet that penetrated his armor. As he was carried away for treatment, confusion spread among the defenders. Despite the emperor's pleas for him to stay, Giustiniani's removal from the battlefield shattered morale. With Ottomans now inside the walls and the defensive leadership in chaos, the city's fate was sealed. Emperor Constantine, recognizing the end had come, reportedly cast off his imperial regalia so he would not be captured, and sword in hand, led a final charge against the invaders. He was never seen again. By 8 a.m., Ottoman forces had secured the walls and were moving into the city. Sultan Mehmed, cautious about potential traps, waited for confirmation of victory before making his triumphal entry around noon. His first act was to proceed to Hagia Sophia, the greatest church in Christendom. When he arrived, he found the cathedral filled with terrified citizens who had sought sanctuary. In a moment, heavy with historical symbolism, Mehmed ordered the building converted into a mosque. He bent down and sprinkled soil over his head in a traditional act of humility before God, then ordered a muezzin to climb the tower and proclaim the Islamic call to prayer. After nearly 1,000 years as a Christian cathedral, Hagia Sophia became a mosque in a single day, the most visible transformation in a city experiencing a historical rupture. The fall was complete. The city that had withstood dozens of sieges over more than a millennium had finally fallen, and the Byzantine Empire ceased to exist. The fall was complete. The city that had withstood dozens of sieges over more than a millennium had finally fallen, and the Byzantine Empire ceased to exist. The immediate aftermath of Constantinople's fall followed the brutal pattern of medieval warfare. Though Sultan Mehmed had promised his troops 3 days of unfettered plundering, standard practice when a city was taken by force rather than surrender, he actually brought the looting under control after 1 day, anxious to preserve the infrastructure of what would become his new capital. For Europe, Constantinople's fall sent shockwaves of existential terror. If the supposedly impregnable city of Constantine could fall, what Christian city was safe? Venice and other maritime powers scrambled to reinforce their eastern outposts. Scholars and artists fled west, carrying manuscripts and knowledge that would help fuel the already developing Renaissance. Many historians consider May 29, 1453, to be the final day of the European Middle Ages and the beginning of the early modern period. The shock of losing this connection to the ancient Roman world, combined with the westward flight of Byzantine scholars and the already developing Renaissance in Italy, accelerated Europe's cultural transformation. Perhaps most enduringly, the fall of Constantinople created a historical dividing line between Europe and the Middle East that continues to influence geopolitics. The Ottoman Empire's European territories, the Balkans, became a complex frontier zone between Western Christianity, Orthodox Christianity, and Islam, creating cultural patterns and tensions that persist into the 21st century. Architecturally, the city itself stands as a monument to this pivotal moment in history. Hagia Sophia, which served as a mosque for nearly 500 years before becoming a museum in the 20th century, and then a mosque again in 2020, embodies in stone and space the cultural transformations triggered by the events of 1453. What do you think? Was the fall of Constantinople inevitable given the technological and demographic realities of the 15th century? Or could different decisions by European powers have preserved this Christian outpost for longer? And most importantly, how might our world be different today If those walls had held, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching Nefarious History. If you found this exploration of one of history's great turning points fascinating, please consider subscribing to our channel for more deep dives into the moments that shaped our world.